Hieronymus Bosch. Take a good look. A man with fish for legs. A bird-headed monster swallowing people whole. A choir singing off a score tattooed on somebody's backside. For 500 years the verdict on this Dutchman was more or less unanimous. The man was insane. A lunatic. Maybe a heretic. And everyone got him backwards. He wasn't painting a nightmare he'd cooked up. He was painting the one behind your own eyes. It only takes 6 paintings to prove it. Starting with a man having his skull sawed open. The cure of folly. Right. A man is strapped to a chair while a surgeon saws into the top of his skull. Grim stuff. Except this was supposed to be medicine. People back then genuinely believed madness was a little stone lodged in the brain, and that the right surgeon could fish it out and make you sane again. Complete rubbish, obviously, and Bosch knew it was rubbish. That's the whole joke. Watch what the surgeon actually lifts out of the man's head. It isn't a stone at all. It's a flower. And look at the doctor's hat, a funnel worn upside down, which in Bosch's world was shorthand for this man is a fraud. So go on, tell me who the fool is here. The patient in the chair, or the quack holding the knife. There's gold lettering curling round the whole scene, and it turns out to be the patient introducing himself. Cut the stone out, quick, my name is Lubbert Das. Lubbert Das being, near enough, the medieval Dutch way of naming your character so gullible. Off to one side a monk and a nun watch the whole thing, one of them with a book balanced on her head she is plainly never going to open. The church sees the con, and does nothing. Now, you'll read all over the place that the flower is a tulip. Bosch mocking Holland's tulip mania. Lovely theory. Tulips didn't reach this corner of Europe until 1593, and Bosch had been in the ground the best part of 80 years by then. So, no. And the man who painted this? No wild-haired outcast raving in a garret. Hieronymus van Aken married money, kept a good house on the market square, and sat in his town's very respectable religious brotherhood. He never needed a single commission to put food on the table. He painted because he looked around at a world full of lubberts letting con men saw their heads open, and he wanted you to see exactly what he saw. The 7 deadly sins. This next one was never meant to hang on a wall at all. It's a tabletop. You're supposed to stand over it and look down, and the moment you step back, the whole painting turns into one giant eye, staring straight up at you. Right in the pupil, Christ is climbing out of his tomb, and under him 4 words in Latin. Beware, beware, the Lord sees. Ringed around that eye are the 7 deadly sins. But Bosch doesn't give you robed figures with little labels. He gives you an ordinary week. A man getting drunk. A couple flirting in a doorway. A merchant fussing over his coins. Sin, the way Bosch tells it, isn't some grand abstraction. It's a Tuesday. Out in the 4 corners sit the things none of us dodge: death, judgment, heaven, and the fire. The message could not be blunter. Someone is watching all of it, all the time, and the fire is patient. But this is the detail that stays with you. This was the favorite painting of the most powerful man on the planet. Philip II of Spain hung it in his private apartments, right between his study and his bedroom, so he walked past it half a dozen times a day. The king who ran half the world chose to fall asleep beside a mirror of his own sins, and wake up to a giant eye reminding him that not even a king gets to look away. The ship of fools. A little boat drifts on a dead calm sea. No rudder. No sail. The mast is a living tree with an owl tucked in the branches, the old badge of stupidity. 8 people are crammed on board, drunk, bawling out a song, one of them already throwing up over the side. And leading the sing-along? A monk and a nun. That's the point. A boat going nowhere, packed with fools, and nobody at the helm. Bosch lifted the idea from the runaway bestseller of 1494, Sebastian Brant's Ship of Fools, though the image goes back much further, all the way to Plato, who used a rudderless ship to mock a society that ignores its wisest people and follows its loudest. But here's what almost nobody tells you about this one. The thing in the Louvre is a stump. Someone sawed it off a much bigger triptych and sold the pieces off across the world. The bottom third is in Yale. The far wing is in Washington. The middle is simply gone. Tree-ring dating proved 3 of the surviving scraps came off the very same oak. So the painting about a broken, drifting humanity got broken up and set adrift itself. You couldn't write it. The Temptation of Saint Anthony. An old man is kneeling in the middle of a nightmare. That's Saint Anthony, a hermit who ran off to the Egyptian desert to be alone with God and found the place absolutely swarming with devils instead. There's a black mass going on, run by demons. A city on fire behind him. Things that have no business existing, stitched together out of fish and flame and bone. And dead center, the old man just kneels there, calm as you like, one hand raised in blessing, pointing at a tiny figure of Christ. For centuries, everyone read this as pure fantasy. Then people started noticing something. Saint Anthony wasn't just any saint. He was the patron of one very particular illness. They called it Saint Anthony's fire. We call it ergotism, poisoning from a fungus that grew on damp rye. Eat the wrong loaf of bread, and you'd burn from the inside out, your fingers and toes turning black with gangrene, your head filling up with visions that looked an awful lot like this. So go back and look at that burning city and those swarming devils again. One reading says Bosch painted this thing to comfort the poisoned, to tell them their nightmares had a name and a saint watching over them. Their hell was real. It came out of a slice of bread. And this is where Bosch stops being a bloke who paints goblins and turns into something far stranger. The horror in this painting doesn't come at the saint from outside. It rises up from within him. The demons aren't out in the desert. They are in his head. Which means they were never monsters at all. They were symptoms. The Garden of Earthly Delights. Everything so far has been a warm-up. This is the one. Nearly 4 meters across, hundreds of naked bodies, painted on oak around the year 1500. And how it reached us is nearly as mad as what's on it. It belonged to William of Orange, the man leading Holland's revolt against Spain. In 1568 a Spanish duke seized it as war loot, and it ended up hanging in the bedroom of the very king trying to crush that revolt, Philip II, who simply could not get enough of Bosch. The most deranged painting in Europe, tucked away in the palace of its most buttoned-up ruler. Read it left to right. Eden, God introducing Eve to Adam. Then the middle, an enormous garden where people gorge on giant strawberries and on each other, all appetite, no shame. And then the right-hand panel yanks the floor out from under you. This is the most detailed hell Bosch ever painted, and it has a theme. Music. The people who lived for earthly pleasure get tortured by the instruments they loved. One man is crucified across the strings of a harp. Another is flattened under a giant lute. And on the backside of a third, Bosch has painted actual musical notation. Remember that choir from the start? In 2014, a student transcribed those exact notes, and the internet lost its mind over the 500-year-old song from a sinner's rear end. Here's the unglamorous truth. Bosch almost certainly just painted something that looked like music, not real notes. The tune is ours. The punishment was his. And then, right at the center of the chaos, the strangest thing he ever made. A creature with a cracked eggshell for a body, tree trunks for legs, a little tavern of drinkers sitting inside its hollow chest. And a human face, twisted back over its shoulder, looking dead at you. A lot of scholars think that face is Bosch himself. Sit with that for a second. In the middle of hell, the painter turns round and catches your eye. Because this garden was never really about sin and punishment. Stare at it long enough and the crowd stops being strangers. It's you. 400 years before anyone had a word for it, Bosch painted a mirror, and then stepped into it, so he could watch you look. The Last Judgement. One last panel, and Bosch hands down his verdict on the lot of us. His Last Judgement hangs in Vienna, and it quietly breaks the rules of its own subject. In a normal judgment scene, heaven and hell get roughly equal billing. Not here. Heaven is a thin strip of light right at the very top, almost an afterthought, holding a handful of saved souls. Everything underneath is swallowed by darkness and fire and torment. Bosch looked at the human race and painted a courtroom where nearly everybody loses. For a long time, this was exactly why they called him a madman, or worse, a heretic in league with the devil. Then, in 1605, a Spanish monk named José de Sigüenza said the truest thing anyone has ever said about him. Other painters, he wrote, show you people the way they look on the outside. Bosch was the only one with the nerve to paint them the way they are on the inside. That one sentence cracks the whole thing open. The goblins, the burning cities, the mirror in the garden. Bosch wasn't hallucinating any of it. He was diagnosing. and it took the rest of us 400 years to catch up. When Freud and Jung finally went looking for the unconscious, Jung turned round and called Bosch its discoverer. When the Surrealists needed a founding father, they found a Dutchman who had been dead since 1516. Salvador Dali stood in front of these paintings in the Prado and studied them like Holy Writ. So forget the Madman. That was never the story. Hieronymus Bosch was the first artist who worked out how to paint the inside of a human head, and he did it 4 centuries before Freud gave the place a name. He wasn't losing his mind. He was drawing yours. If Bosch just made you see something you'd walked past 100 times, do the man a favor and subscribe. And settle an argument for me in the comments. Of all 6 paintings, which is the one you would least want hanging over your bed? Every video here takes one masterpiece and pulls it apart until it starts looking back at you. This is Pentimento. Masterpieces. Decoded.